And welcome to the Aaron Katzman Show. I'm your host, Aaron Katzman. We speak to your life, your money, and your investments. And as always, we're coming to you from the spiritual and soon to be financial capital of the world, Jerusalem, Israel. If you like this content, please hit the like button below. If you've not yet done so, why don't you go ahead and hit the subscribe button where you can subscribe to both the YouTube channel and to the podcast. And if you think somebody might find this interesting, why don't you go ahead and share it with them as well? So people sort of, off the cuff, offhanded, sometimes say, Katzman, you always talk about, your goals and hitting your goals and defining your goals and then creating your portfolio to allow you to achieve whatever it is you set out to do. Come on, we get it, but it's not really relevant what's going to happen. And, we should just invest, track the market or beat the market or whatever it is. And it's really, really interesting. First of all, the most common discussion I would say that I have right now with current clients and with people who are looking for consultations is whether they can afford moving to assisted living facilities here in Israel, which can be rather costly. They have the assets, but is it going to be too much of a drain on their assets? And then once they get there, they're not going to be able to eat? What should they do with their property, which they're living in now? Should they just sell it, not have a headache of being a landlord anymore? Along with that, potentially there might be some tax that they have to pay. Should they rent it out, where they'd be able to potentially use that money, which they're getting, to cover most, if not all, of the monthly expenses that they're paying? These are big, big issues. And I'll tell you, on my end, at least, there's a certain fulfillment where you've had somebody who's been with you as a client, going back to the 90s even, or the early thousands. When, I've had clients who've been with me for more than 20 years, 25 years. And, we did it by the book, and they defined their goals, they defined their needs, we invested accordingly. Now, voila, they call me up and they say, we're considering moving to X and Y assisted living facility. Do you have some time to talk about whether we can do it financially? So these things, and then we go through it. Obviously, we go through the numbers, we go through their situation and their income, and their assets, and we make a decision whether they can do it, how it will be. Will it be comfortable for them? Will it be a little bit potentially tight for them? All kinds of we spend a long, long time analyzing whether it's a good idea or not in terms of financially, whether it's financially a good idea or not. I've had clients who it's been a complete disaster. They didn't, we went through the numbers. They don't have enough. They're different tracks that one can go ahead and pay for to enter assisted living. Some of them require huge down payments, which you end up over a certain amount of years losing most of, if not all. Sometimes you lose 50%. It depreciates by a certain percentage every year. There are for those who don't have that much to put down, they can pay a much larger rent, sort of like a monthly payment. If you're not working with a lot of assets to begin with, a large monthly payment might be sort of suffocating. Many a time I've met with someone who had their heart set on, said facility where their friends are going, and after running the numbers, it's just not going to happen, right? They just don't have that kind of money, and if they want assisted living, they've got to, set their sights something on something that's going to be a little bit more down market. So God willing, if they live a long life, they're not going to run out of money. Why am I bringing this all up? Because, like I said, people just don't get it, and this is why we do. This is why This is why we're in business. This is why I'm in business, right? We really do sit with people to help them define their goals and define their needs, and then create portfolios that over time will enable them to achieve whatever it is, right? If we just play speculative stocks all day and buy and sell, and there's no overriding strategy or thought process behind what we're doing, people can be left short, right? At the end of the day, when they retire, they're not going to have this money. This is why we do what we do. And as I said before, it's very, very fulfilling when you work with somebody for years and years, and then they get to the situation that we spoke about decades ago, or not even, maybe we spoke about it 5 years ago as part of our ongoing, continuing relationship, of ideas that they had or certain views of the future that they had, and then, act accordingly and together, maybe readjust or whatever it is, but get that money invested in a way that they'll be able to achieve that. And in this situation, pay for assisted living. That's pretty important, right? It's pretty important. It's not just, investing in the latest, greatest, hottest stock. That's not a way over time, to be able to for you to achieve your goals. And it's not about, as I said a lot of times, not about dying with the most amount of money, right? That bumper sticker I saw 30 years ago, right? Whoever dies with the most amount of money wins. It might be cute, but there's no relevance to your life with that. You don't enjoy the money once you die. You don't use the money once you die. But you certainly need the money when you get into your late 70s or 80s and you're contemplating, well, it's getting sort of hard for me to be on my own. Or even as a couple, it's hard for us to be on our own, and, getting a little bit of assistance would allow us to remain more or less independent. And that would be a good move for us, and we'd like to be able to afford it. And that's why we do what we do. Think about that. A lot of the do-it-yourself investing and the people out there, just put your money into whatever, have no concept. They really have no clue. They've never been with clients, through these different stages of, accumulation phase when they were working, and then approaching retirement, and then early retirement, and then later on in retirement. There, all these different stages call for different approaches, different processes. And you've got to follow, if you want to be successful, follow the processes. Don't keep changing because you read somewhere that you should do, Bitcoin, or that you should put your money, into AI or whatever, right? That's not the way. That's not a strategy to get you, when you're in your 80s, into an assisted living facility. You might get lucky and make a lot of money, but you might give it back the next trend that you follow. Right? There's a reason that slow and steady wins the day at the end of the day, right? Because there's a thought process behind it, which is very, very, very important. And people just need to think about it. And those of you who are out there, I'm not saying, oh my God, close it up and transfer your accounts to me. I'm not saying that, right? But if you are a do-it-yourself investor, think about it. Think about where you are currently holding in life, what your situation is. Where do you want to be? What can come up in the future that you should be planning for today? And I'm telling you right now that for most of them, assisted living is the farthest thing from their mind, right? But as advisors, we know that that's a big reality. And you have to start thinking about that in advance. You can't wake up 6 months before you want to go and say, oh, I want to, can I afford it? And I really haven't. I've just been, investing according to tips I hear at the water cooler. I guess it hasn't worked out for me so much. And tomorrow I want to move into assisted living. Can I afford it? Right? Obviously, that's an extreme, but as an example, right? But it really does, right? It just goes to show that you should have a strategy and you should think about these things from the beginning. And as you go through life, and as some of these events come closer and closer, you should think about it, speak to your advisor, or if you're doing it yourself, think long and hard about that new phase that you're entering into, and if your portfolio is invested accordingly. And if it's not, you have to make those prudent changes, because ultimately, right, you're not getting buried with the money. The money's there to serve a purpose. Hopefully, you'll be able to enjoy it, and you'll have long, healthy lives, and most of the money can be left to the next generation. But sometimes life happens, and that doesn't always work out the way that we wanted, and you have to be able to accommodate financially for life happening, so to speak. Okay? You've been tuning into the Aaron Katzman Show, where we speak about your life and money and your investments. If you like this content, please hit the like button below. If you've not yet done so, please go ahead and subscribe to both the YouTube channel and to the podcast. And if you think somebody may find this of interest, why don't you go ahead and hit the share button and share it with them as well. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll speak to you soon.